So we already mentioned the partial pressure gradient of oxygen, but before we move on to perfusion versus diffusion limited, I just wanted to make a point about this. So if you want to calculate your partial pressure of oxygen and figure out the gradient, you'd use your alveolar gas equation, which is your P capital A O2 equals your FiO2 times your atmospheric pressure minus your vapor pressure in water, which is 47 millimeters of mercury at 37 degrees. And then you minus your PaCO2, which is your arterial CO2, divided by your respiratory quotient. So if you figure this out, you'd have your atmospheric pressure at sea level, which is approximately 760 millimeters of mercury. However, our inspired gas becomes fully humidified in the upper airways. So the water vapor, as we said, exerts a 47 millimeters of mercury of pressure at 37 degrees, which reduces the pressure available for oxygen and other gases. Therefore, the equation becomes 760 minus 47, which equals 713 millimeters of mercury. And then you multiply this by the inspired oxygen fraction, which is 21%, which gives an inspired oxygen tension of approximately 150 millimeters of mercury. And then once oxygen enters the alveolus and mixes with carbon dioxide, the alveolar oxygen tension falls to around 100 millimeters of mercury. And this is because if you consider the end of this equation, your PaCO2 divided by your respiratory quotient, the PaCO2 is used because your alveolar CO2 essentially equilibrates with the arterial CO2. So whatever the arterial CO2 is, we usually use as the surrogate here. And this would be, in a normal person, about 40 millimeters of mercury. You divide it by the respiratory quotient, which is determined by the fuel substrate used by the cells. You can also use the respiratory exchange ratio, which is a measurement at the level of the mouth. And you're considering how much CO2 is produced divided by how much oxygen is consumed. And in a normal Western diet, it's about 0.8. So it becomes PaCO2 of 40 divided by 0.8, which equals 50. So when you apply it to our equation where we had 150 millimeters of mercury minus 50, it ends up being 100 millimeters of mercury. So the importance here is that if you actually consider the fraction inspired oxygen when it gets to the level of the alveolus, it ends up being 13.16%. And this is something that can really trip people up because you make the assumption often that when you breathe in 21% oxygen, it must be 21% when it gets to the alveolus, but that simply isn't true. But what this does do is it establishes our driving gradient for the partial pressure of oxygen from 100 millimeters of mercury in the alveolus to that 40 millimeters of mercury in the venous blood, which will equilibrate over the length of the capillary bed to become 100 millimeters of mercury when it gets to the arterial side when you're breathing in 21% oxygen, which as we said is 13.1% when it gets to the alveolus. Now for the PaCO2, it's essentially calculated within the alveolar gas equation for oxygen, and we use the respiratory quotient as we need to consider the transfer of oxygen to the blood occurring at the same time as the removal of CO2 to the alveolus, which should also be in equilibrium with the cellular respiration. So the respiratory quotient is something that I talk about in another video, which I'll link below. But essentially it's CO2 production divided by oxygen consumption. And if you take this in raw numbers in mils, it ends up being a CO2 production of 200 mil per minute and an oxygen consumption of about 250 mil per minute in a 70 kilogram male. And if you divide this, it ends up being a 0.8, and it's largely dependent also on the fuel source you use. As for example, if you have glucose as a sole fuel source, then your CO2 production to oxygen consumption is 1:1, so it equals 1. While if you use, for example, fat, it ends up being about 0.7. Now, at the level of the alveolus, because you have this deficit of about 50 mil per minute that's occurring of your CO2 produced to oxygen consumed, the alveolus must shrink in volume. And as per Dalton's law, the sum of the partial pressures of the gases must equal the total partial pressure. So if you take Dalton's law, the total partial pressure equals your oxygen partial pressure plus your CO2 partial pressure plus your vapor pressure plus your nitrogen partial pressure. So therefore, as oxygen drops, CO2 or another gas must increase, but because nitrogen isn't very soluble in the blood and our vapor pressure is constant, CO2 will be the most likely to increase here, which it does, and it's why it's used in the alveolar gas equation while nitrogen is largely ignored. So if you consider a respiratory quotient of 0.8, which is a pretty standard number for a Western diet, this makes the equation 40 millimeters of mercury divided by 0.8, which equals 50 millimeters of mercury. But this doesn't cross back to the arterial blood for a couple of reasons, and that's because atmospheric CO2 is almost zero, so the gradient drives CO2 away from the alveolus. A minute ventilation also affects CO2 as it quickly clears the CO2 from the alveolus. And another consideration is that now that the oxygenated hemoglobin going to the arterial side releases its CO2 that was originally bound, it loses affinity for the CO2 as well, which at the level of the alveolar briefly raises the partial pressure in the blood as it's liberated, so the gradient will favour movement to the alveolus. This all, of course, would reverse if any of these processes were impaired, such as rebreathing of CO2, apnea that's prolonged, or especially apnea that's got a closed glottis or obstructed airway, where you'll have CO2 build up and not cleared to the atmosphere passively for a concentration gradient as well.